Okay, so it looks like everything's straight. So, Yachimo, greetings, Yerase. We thank you for tuning in. I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Ranehempata, Akan Odwirafo of Akwamumaina Maruka, Itifimudi Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, meaning African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. Also the founder of HOODOO Soulosophy, the Hearth Shrine of Akan Ancestral religion in North America. That is our Odine, our shrine house, our temple for Hoodoo, which is Akan Ancestral religion in North America. So we are doing this second part of the series of HOODOO Soulosophy, not philosophy, but soulosophy. There's a lot of misinformation dealing with the Hoodoo tradition. We want to bring some light to the culture, the ancestral religious practice, and the soulosophy, because people get kind of wound up into root work, rituals, quote unquote, recipes, and so forth. But as we have shown in our documentary film and our numerous publications, I've published 31 books, hundreds of articles, 2 documentary films. We have educational institution and so forth, certification as well, a degree program, as well as a meditation instructor certification program. So, but when we deal with the Hoodoo tradition, we are the first to publish definitive proof that Hoodoo is the Akan religion from Akan people of Ghana and Ivory Coast. Our people were forced into North America hundreds of years ago. We continued the Hoodoo tradition, Akan ancestral religion, under the Akan term Undu, which means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. It also means to feel a presentiment of foreboding, to see what's unfolding in the spirit realm, so you can make ritual adjustments. So let's look at a couple of things before we get into the Bebra and Ekaa, which is reincarnation and karma from the ancient original Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, meaning African perspective. The corruption came with the Hindus and the Buddhists and the Eurasians and the Western pseudo-metaphysicists and so forth. So when we think about reincarnation or karma and so forth, we get misinformation coming from them, but they stole these terms and these concepts from ancient Kemet and Kanit, Egypt and Nubia, and corrupted them and so forth. We want to bring it back to reality because this is part of our ancestral religious tradition. And we want to talk about specifically a specific expression of that. But first and foremost, so this is why we have the Bebra and Ekaa. Bebra in Akan means reincarnation. Ekaa is the term for debt, what is owed and so forth. That is the root of ka, or karma, or karma and so forth. That's what we're going to see. But this is from one of our journals on the Hoodoo tradition. Now, before we jump into that, you will see on this channel our documentary film, Hoodoo, Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. You can watch that film for free. It's a full documentary film. We released it 2 years ago in October, and we talk about the identity of Hoodoo, the cosmology, the language, and all of that detailed information. We go into a great deal of information in that documentary. This film is part of a trilogy, a 3-part series on the Hoodoo tradition. We are working on part 2 right now, and our aim is to release it on October 18th for a pre-screening. And let me scroll down so you can see that. This is the flyer for our Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. Hoodoo Mind means Hoodoo Nation. This is our 11th annual Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. It's the only authentic Hoodoo festival in the country. We focused on Hoodoo as Akan ancestral religious practice and culture and so forth, and soulosophy. We typically have vendors and speakers and, throughout the day and so forth, and food and everything else. This year, we want to release the film as a pre-screening. It's October 18th here in Washington, D.C. For those who contribute to our crowdfund effort, we're trying to complete the film before October 18th so we can show the pre-screening to all of you who contribute. And if you can't come in person, you'll have a link to the live stream, a private link so you can view the film. So that's the flyer for that. And you will see on our page, we've done some of the videos and so forth, but this is what we are actually working on right now. I'm going to put this in the chat room, and then we're going to get back to this. Okay, so if you'd like to contribute, we appreciate that. We're about halfway finished with the film. We need to do some more filming before the end of September. And actually our New Year, our 7-day New Year observance actually begins next week on September 16th through the 22nd. And the 22nd, which is the first day of Atem or autumn, that is our New Year's Day, the Hoodoo New Year. We can talk about that a little bit later. Our first day of 13,026, so-called 2026, but we say 13,026, 3 months prior to the European New Year that begins in the dead of winter, the dead of night, when it's cold and dead and dark. That's a caveman, Iceman New Year. That has nothing to do with us. So we deal with the conception time, which is autumn, the time of harvest, but also the time of conception or seeding. Conception or seeding is a beginning. That is the autumn equinox, Atemet equinox. That's on New Year's Day. But as we're filming over the next couple of weeks, and then we can start the post-production and complete the film by mid-October, we want to finish that. So if you can contribute, we appreciate that. That's the link right there. Now, talking about Hoodoo, so you can watch the film. Now let's look at what's some of the information that's in the film. Now this is from one of our 31 books, the Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Journal that we published. And one of the articles that we put forward in here is this one. So, Nyama Kakaru, or Nyama, Njama, and Kakaduru, which is Jama Kakaru. Jama Kakaru came to be pronounced Johnny Kankaru or Johnny Kankarurut. So, Johnny Kankarurut or Johnny Kankaru comes from Jama, Njama Kakaru. That's High John the Conqueror. That comes directly from Akan ancestral religion and culture. We prove that the root itself is called Kakaru, the kaka, the biting. Kaka means biting. Kaka also means to rub, touch, to rub, and so forth. And undu means medicine. So Kakaru means the biting or chewing. Kaka, undu, medicine, or hoodoo. Kaka also means the rubbing. Kaka, undu, medicine, or hoodoo. So Kakaru was corrupted into Kankarut or Kankarurut. Kakaduru, as you see here, is the Asante dialectical version. In the Asante Akan dialect, Kakaduru. In the Akwamu dialect, is Kakadu. So Johnny Kankaru is Jama Kakaru, or Johnny Kankarurut, and so forth. I touched on this just to show you. These are some of the things that, all of these we go into detail about in the film. So you'll see that Undu, in the Akan language, the Twi language of the Akan people, Undu, meaning medicine from roots, trees, and plant life, and to become heavy with the spirit and so forth. All of that came to be pronounced hoodoo in North America. Kanche, to utter incantations. Ka, to bring the spirits forward. Nche, or ache, kanche, came to be pronounced kanje, like kanja man, kanja woman. Later English conjure, but it's kanche. Hinti came to be pronounced hint or haint, as a haint spirit in the hoodoo tradition. Moja in Akan came to be pronounced mojo in hoodoo in North America. Ja, or ja padie, came to be pronounced jak, and jak balie or jak ball, jack ball. Komfoa, komfo, and komfoa, which is a form of priest or priestess and so forth. Komfoa, doctor, and so forth, came to be pronounced the Gofoa or Gofa, doctor with the Gofa dust. Jo is pronounced sho or sho, to shout, and so forth. So all of these Akan terms that make up the hoodoo tradition in North America, all of them are Akan. They're not from the Congo, they're not from the Dogon, they're not from the Igbo, they're not from the Bambara, they're not from the Mindi, they're not from these various other groups. Hoodoo is specifically and exclusively the Akan ancestral religion that was preserved in our blood circle. But the key point is, it's not just about roots, it's about philosophy. It's one thing to deal with roots and culture and so forth, and medicine and healing and holistic health and quote unquote alternative health or natural health or naturopathic medicine. That comes from hoodoo and juju and voodoo and so forth in North America. But our root work is 1/8 of the hoodoo tradition. So just like medicine in your everyday life, you don't take medicine every single day unless there's a problem. Most of the time you're functioning in the world and you only deal with the medicine when it's necessary. But how do you govern your everyday life? That is your quote unquote philosophy, your culture, your soulosophy. Hoodoo governs every aspect of life. So let's look at this. I'm going to show you a document that we share within our hoodoo shrine house. We talked about hoodoo coming from the Akan term undu. And then you have the ritual practitioners, Odwirafo, which is hoodoo yefo, hoodoo sinfo, hoodoo tofo, hoodoo mafo. And you see these different ritual practitioners in the hoodoo tradition. They're hoodoo yefo, hoodoo sinfo, hoodoo tofo, hoodoo mafo. Hoodoo yefo is the root worker. Hoodoo sinfo is the root doctor. Hoodoo tofo is the one who uses the medicine to poison the enemy, like the so-called slave master and so forth, to kill them so we can escape from enslavement. The hoodoo mafo or udumafo is the diviner and so forth. So these hoodoo practitioners, same terms from the Akan language, we carried into North America. Root doctor, root worker, diviner, poisoner, and so forth, all of that. Okay, so this is one of the documents that we share within our organization. And we expound upon that, of course, but the 7 days of the week in the Akan tradition are governed by male and female divinities, which we call the Afuraitkaitnit bosom. But the 7 days of the week we show here on the left, but we just want to show you this portion right here, because it's important to know how, we practice tradition. And this is true of all Afurakani cultures. So you'll see that each day of the week, the sun, moon, various planets carry their different energy and so forth. These are the male and female deities on the left. And we can talk about that a little bit later, but I just want to show you like the ritual practices. So yes, we have Adenang, which is ritual balance, ritual movement and so forth. Ejum is ritual song. Abonkwa, different form of ritual movement. Mpayi, which is ritual prayer. Asao, ritual dance, as you can see here. Kabomu, ritual copulation with your spouse and so forth to generate that tumi or that sacred power to manifest and so forth. SUSUW or SUSUW, meditation. These are 7 different gateways to the spirit realm. So SUSUW, the Akan term for meditation, is a way to a calm or balanced way to move into the spirit realm. Ritual asao or dance is a fiery, explosive way when people dance and the drums are going and they spin and explode into meditation. Their spirit goes into the spirit realm or spirit possession happens. Ritual prayer is another gateway, like a cool, energetic way to go into the spirit realm through the ritual vibrations. Ritual song, when the sound vibrations are moving and certain words are used and so forth ritually, that propels the person into the spirit realm. So there are different ways, fiery gateways, watery gateways, and so forth to get to the spirit realm. Sometimes you engage in meditation, SUSUW. Sometimes you engage in ritual dance and so forth. Sometimes you engage in ritual song. Sometimes you engage in ritual adenane or balance. Sometimes you engage in ritual prayer. All these, or ritual movement and so forth. Different gateways for different times of the day or week or month and so forth to enter into the spirit realm, to engage with the divinity that governs the head, as well as the ancestresses and ancestors, which we call Nsamanfo. But you also see here Adebisa, that is an oracle divination, doing spiritual readings, divining, whether you're using shells or water or fire and so forth, different forms of divination. Oshuye, libation, that's a form of ritual invocation of the Abosom, the deities, ritual evocation of the ancestresses and ancestors. Moja, aforibo, blood sacrifice, aforibo, ritual offering like food and things like that at the shrines. Asumain, talismans, like ritual talismans and so forth. Inceso, sculptures, like in English they would say idols, but of course these are the receptacles of the energy of forces in nature that take up residence in that sculpture, just like you have a cell phone. You receive a signal from the cell phone. Now you can communicate through the cell phone to the other individual. When we have sculptures set up in SUSUW, which the whites and our supreme call idols, these are points of resonance or shrines for the deities to take up residence temporarily to communicate directly with us. So it's a sacred and brilliant practice. Then in Combre, you have an ancestral shrine or a deity shrine and so forth. These are different things that we engage ritually to align ourselves on a regular basis. But we also have soulosophy. What is our divine function in the world? How do we relate to the great mother and great father supreme being? How do we relate to plant life, animal life, mineral life, and other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit human life? How do we rear our children? How do we engage in agriculture? How do we engage in procuring medicine? How do we engage in establishing sound systems of governance and jurisprudence? How do we engage in manufacturing rooted in our culture? So for example, agriculture, how do we engage the earth mother, Asase Afua, the fertile earth mother? So we can engage in agriculture and feed ourselves, as well as procure medicine, but not destroy and pollute the earth at the same time. So every aspect of life is governed by our tradition. Now, this takes us into this notion of one of the things that, people talk about a lot, but they have misinformation regarding reincarnation and quote unquote karma. So so we wrote this article a while back, Amani Hunu, Overcoming Transcarnational Suffering. When we say transcarnational, trans just means through. We're not talking about the perversity of dissexuality, homosexuality, and all that. Instead of saying, reincarnational and so forth, or incarnational, we say transcarnational suffering. So through successive reincarnations, you incarnate into the world, your spirit enters into your mother's womb, takes up residence in that zygote, that becomes the embryo, that becomes you. So you have incarnated into a physical body and you're born into the world. You become an elder, or elders, you transition, spirit leaves the body. A couple hundred years later, you reincarnate. So certain things happen. You're the same spirit, but you have returned through one of your descendants a couple of hundred years later, and you're operating through a new body. So it's a new incarnation. When we talk about transcarnational, certain things you carry from incarnation to incarnation to incarnation. That includes wisdom that you've accumulated for thousands of years. But sometimes you can carry spiritual infections that are passed on different incarnations. When we have a culture in place, we can deal with that, we can ameliorate that. But if you don't have culture in place, those infections are passed on generation after generation, incarnation after incarnation, and it manifests as a problem in the community, and it can manifest as amani hunu, which is suffering. So how do we overcome transcarnational suffering? Okay. So amani hunu is from the Akan dictionary, tree dictionary. It means suffering, affliction, tribulation, trouble, and so forth. Now, one thing we must address first and foremost, we say it's important to understand that amani hunu, which is suffering, is not encoded within the okra, which is the male and female terms for soul or divine consciousness in the Akan language. Every Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit group has a term for the deity that governs the head. So just like you have a physical body and you have a smaller physical body inside your head region, which is the brain, and it has the blueprint for all the functions and interactions of the billions of cells, it's the master and so forth. You have a spirit body, which is called SUSUW in Akan, And there's a radiant force, a spiritual force in the head region of your spirit body, your quote unquote spirit's brain. That is your ka, if you're a male, ka-et, if you're a female. That's in the language of ancient Kemet. In Akan is the okra, if you're male, okra, if you're female. In the Yoruba tradition in Nigeria, they call it the ori inu, the inner ori, the inner spiritual head. In Vodun, the Ewe people, they call it the se lido. The Igbo people call it the chi. But it is a divinity. There's a male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female. This is only for Black people, of course. Asians, Europeans, and so forth do not have this. So just like you can have some, if you see a child, you know, being taken in a limousine or something, and they have an attendant to go with them to make sure everything is taking place, and they have an elder or elders to ride with them. When you're sent into the world and you incarnate into the world, there's a divinity that's assigned to your spiritual head pre-incarnation, and you come into the world with that elder or elders, that force of nature governing your spiritual head. Some people are children of a fire divinity, some people are children of water divinities, some people are children of earth divinities, some people are children of atmospheric divinities. It manifests in not only your morphological and phenotypical characteristics, but also within your spiritual disposition and your energetic output. So we come into the world with the divinity that governs the head. That is the okra. That's the actual definition of the soul. The whites and offspring misinterpret what the term soul, even the term soul comes from Soro in ancient Kemet, but they misinterpret what the soul means and says it means breath and other nonsense, totally inaccurate. We even wrote a book, Rekit Hena Speret, showing the etymological origin of the terms religion and spirit, which is Rekit and Speret in ancient Kemet. But the true term for soul is the divine consciousness, the deity that governs the head. Suffering is not encoded within your divine consciousness, within your soul. That's a deity, a male deity if you're male, female divinity if you're female. The only thing that the deities govern are divine order. There's no disorder or suffering encoded within us. So this notion of being born in sin is pure stupidity. That's just a political ploy for the whites and our offspring to force fake religion on us. The fictional cartoon character Jesus or Yeshua, the fictional cartoon character Muhammad, the fictional cartoon character Allah, the fictional cartoon character Muhammad or Yahweh or Buddha or Brahman. We address these fictional cartoon characters and how they were manufactured in the first hoodoo film and in our books, and we'll talk about that later. But they put these political ploys in these fake religions and pseudo philosophies to make us believe that we were born in sin. That's in the Western sense. So therefore, anything that's happening to us, we need a savior, and of course, they're going to put their image as the savior. On the Eastern side, like in Hinduism and Jainism and different parts, they'll talk about you incarnated into a certain condition in life because you did all these negative things in the past. So the people who are controlling you now, and you are lower caste and so forth, and the higher caste are the whites, and the lower caste are the blacks. Well, you just need to leave it like that because that's divine order. You are suffering and the whites are in control because that's divine order, and you incarnated that way, and you shouldn't try to fight it, because if you try to fight it and try to get justice and overcome your oppressor, you're actually going against divine order because your suffering was encoded within you before you even incarnated. Pure stupidity, political criminality, and corruption. So we want to get to the real, because whenever we hear the terms reincarnation or karma, we get the definitions from either Hinduism, Buddhism, Western pseudo-metaphysicism, or white New Age pseudo-spirituality, which combines different expressions of that. But the actual reality comes from our ancient ancestral religious practices that existed before the whites and our offspring existed on Earth. We have the proper definitions. So first we have to dismiss that entire notion that we were born in sin or we incarnated to be oppressed, because that was part of divine order. So suffering is encoded within our souls. Pure stupidity and fraud. Now, that's the first thing we have to get rid of. Secondly, your Okra, the divinity that governs your head, your Okrawa, it carries your divine function, which in Akan we call the Nkra and Nkrabia, the masculine and feminine expressions of your divine function. You have a function to execute in the world. Just like every cell in the body has a function to execute in the world, you have a function to execute. And this is for Black people only. Your liver cell comes into being to support liver functions, its parent organ or parent deity. And when it serves its parent deity, then it serves you, the supreme being, at the same time. You are the supreme being to yourselves. And the organs and glands are their parent deities, the deities that govern their spiritual head, so to speak. Your heart cells support heart functions, the parent organ or parent deity. When they support heart functions like they were designed to do, they support you, the supreme being, at the same time. Pancreatic cells support pancreatic functions. And when they do that, serve their parent organ or deity, they're serving you, the great being, at the same time. We, plant life, animal life, mineral life, and Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, African Black human life exclusively, we are the cells within the great divine body of Amenet and Amen. Now let me show you who Amenet and Amen are for those who are unfamiliar. We talk about this in our film as well. So I'm going to show you some images. This is from our book. I just recently released a few months ago, ODWIRASEM Trustorical Anthology. It's an 8.5 by 11, 600-page book. You'll see it's in full color. And we're going to be talking about this particular book now. It's a combination of 12 of the books that are published dealing with Trustorical information, cosmology, spirituality, linguistics, and so forth, Trustory, all combined into one volume. They've all been expanded. So I want to show you something from this book so you can get an idea of the kind of information that you will get. The first of the 12 books in that anthology is Afuraitkainit, the origin of the term Africa. So we show the etymological origin of that. But let's go down to page, actually, no, we're going to go into, just so you can see an image of Amen and Amenet. So it's 12 different books. We expanded on the books, expanded the information, books we published previously, but since we've traveled to Kemet a number of times and other places, we've expanded the information and so forth. But let me show you right quick the information. So here. So this is Amen and Amenet, the great father and great mother supreme being, that the whites in our spring use Amen's name at the end of their prayers and so forth, or Amin or Amen and so forth. They're utilizing the name of this divinity. Of course, they cut out the great mother Amenet. Now, this is another image of Amen and Amenet seated side by side in the temple of Apet Reset, which is what they would call Luxor today, but it's Apet Reset and so forth. So in Akan, that's Inyamewa and Inyame, the great mother and great father. In Yoruba, that's Olokun, the great mother, Olorun, the great father, and so forth. It's Mawu, the great mother, and Lisa, the great father, and Vodun, and so forth. But we're talking about the great mother, great father, supreme being. So when we say that the divine function we're given to execute in the world is given by Inyamewa, Inyame, the great mother, great father, supreme being, it's encoded within our spirit's brain. That is divine order. So suffering or disorder is not encoded within your soul. That's pure stupidity. Suffering, we say, arises out of our disalignment from our okra, our soul, divine consciousness, and hence our divine function, which is encoded within our okra. Now, the term karma, now we can get to the term karma. They'll say the term karma is said to be derived from Qued and Proto-Indo-European, meaning to make or to do. It also refers to the effects of our actions. They stole the term from our language. So let's look at the misinformation and then show the correction. You see karma. In an Indian context, the sum of a person's actions in one life, which determines his form in the next. From Sanskrit, karma, action, work, deed, fate, related to Sanskrit, konoti. But it says from the Proto-Indo-European root, quar, to make, form. And so when they talk about quer or quad or quad, meaning to make or to form, and it's the Proto-Indo-European root, when they say Indo-European, when the white Eurasian moved from Europe into the Near East and into northern, what is now Pakistan and northern India and so forth, thousands of years ago, and they spread across Eurasia in that fashion. They carried their corrupted language with them, so they say Indo-European. Let's talk about the whites and their offspring. So typically the Western whites and so forth. The Proto-Indo-European language family, when you look at English and you see what is the root of this word, and you'll say it comes from the Latin or the Greek or the Germanic. You keep going back, the Proto-Germanic or Tocharian, and then you get back to the Proto-Indo-European language phylum. That's the posited root of all the Indo-European languages, the white languages and so forth, Western Eurasian languages and so forth. They'll say that's the root. So you see PIE is Proto-Indo-European. But those Proto-Indo-European roots were stolen from our ancestral languages. And we brought those languages into Southern Europe when we crossed from northern Afuraitkaitnit Africa into Southern Europe over 40,000 years ago, and we continued to speak our languages, and the whites and offspring learned about that when they came into being in northern Eurasia a few thousand years ago, degenerated into melanin recessive entities, mutations. They came back and learned these languages from our people. So that term quar, meaning to make or to do, comes from ka in ancient Kemet, which is a term for soul, but also ka or kara, that's the shrine or sanctuary. Ka is the root. And kat, you'll see work, labor, toil, work, what is to be done, made, and so forth. So the root is ka, and also the root of kara, akar. That's where they get quar, quer, meaning to make or to do. It comes from ka and kar, which means to work, labor, toil, to make, to do, and so forth. That's where they stole it from. You can even see here the medut or hieroglyph of the individual kneeling, and he's holding the vessel on his head. He's carrying the vessel on his head and so forth. This is the labor he's carrying. And that's one of the reasons we use that image for this particular live stream. Sister with the vessel on her head, she's carrying the vessel, but that's also reflective of the great female divinity Nebet Het in ancient Kemet. She's called Akua in Akan. She's called Agberu, the wife of Legba, Ilegba, Yeshu in Yoruba. She's Koni, the wife of Legba in Vodun. She's Akua, the wife of Awuku in Akan. She's Nebet Het, the wife of Set in ancient Kemet. You see she has the vessel on her head. We're going to talk about how that vessel carries your emotional energy, and if you don't balance your emotional energy, you can fall to the wayside. But our soulosophy, through ritual practice, meditation, ritual dance, ritual song, ritual prayer, ritual movement, ritual chant, and libation and giving offerings and different things. These are ways to regulate and realign yourself spiritually so you can get back in harmony with divine order and overcome any obstacle or perceived obstacle in life. But let's get into this notion of overcoming transcarnational suffering. I had to give you that philosophical or cosmological foundation first, because there's so much misinformation out there. So kara, or quad, the root of quadma is quad, which is, to make, to do, and so forth. That is stolen from kad and ka in ancient Kemet. The work that is to be done, talking about your divine function in the world. What kind of cell are you within the divine body? What is the work that you are to do? If you're a heart cell or immune system cell, for example, your function is to protect the body because you're an immune system cell. That is your ka, or your kad, or misnomer quad, or quadrma, and so forth. That is your work, or what are you to do? That is what you owe your debt to the divine order. So karma or krama is kraba or krabea in the Akan language. Ka is the root of kara, which means shrine, but it also, the soul is the shrine and so forth of divine consciousness. Ka, soul, divine consciousness. Kara, the shrine of that. And so in Akan, you have akra, which is kara, the soul, divine consciousness. You have ka, which means a debt. What is owed? What are you to do, and so forth? What are you to give, and so forth? That's the same as ka in ancient Kemet. You have kra, not only meaning soul, divine consciousness, but also to dismiss or send on an errand, to give an errand. What are you supposed to do? Here's the message. This is the work you're supposed to do. This is your commission. This is your errand. This is what you're supposed to do. On the masculine side is kra. On the feminine side is kra, bea. Just like you have et as feminine in English, like Sean and Shawnette, or John and Johnette, and so forth, which is stolen from ancient Kemet because the et is the feminizing principle in the language. So you have amen and aminet, ra and ra'et. But in English, you have Sean and Shawnette and so forth. In Akan, you have bea, that's the feminine. Instead of et, it's bea. So you have kra, which is the masculine, kra, bea is the feminine. That is your divine function, what you're to do in the world, and the manner in which you are to execute that function in the world. What kind of spiritual potencies were you given to execute a certain function? If you're a child of an immune system deity, a fire divinity, child of the divinity who animates the planet, Benna, Abena, which the whites and offspring call Mars, called Ogun in Yoruba, but we call him Benna in Akan, and the female divinity is Abena, that fiery force, the god of war and hot metal and fire and so forth. And the female divinity, she wages war to destroy disorder. They govern the immune and lymphatic systems. If you're an immune system cell or lymphatic system cell in the great divine body, you're going to be naturally inclined towards immune system functions in the community. So you're naturally inclined towards policing functions, security functions, martial arts and so forth, teaching and training, defense. You're an immune system or lymphatic system cell within the community because you carry that energy into the world. If you're a healer or a healeress and you're a child of an earth divinity and so forth, you're going to be naturally inclined towards being in the forest or different places where you can procure plant life and mineral life and learn the medicinal use of the various plants and minerals and so forth, thousands of plants and expressions of mineral life. You have a natural inclination towards that. That is your divine function in the world. You may have somebody else who's a child of a, harder earth divinity, like the skeletal system and so forth, the rocks of earth and mineral life of earth and so forth, like the deity Min. And then you're concerned with things that are structural and strong and sound and lasting. So you may be drawn to architectural engineering, construction, building, those kinds of things. Whatever your energy complex is, it can be fused into or flows into certain kinds of occupations that carry that energy. So, but the same thing is true within the community. So we have a proper understanding of what is your divine function. You have a purpose in the world. We say function instead of destiny because function is more descriptive properly. If someone says so-and-so was destined to play basketball, that's idiotic. There's nothing within divine order. The supreme being didn't send you into the world to fill up a piece of leather or rubber with air, to bounce it around and throw it in a hole so thousands of people can scream. That's idiotic. That's something that was created by the whites and offspring. We come into the world to execute a specific function in creation. So that is our quote unquote destiny. It's our function. It's our krabia. We have a function because we have a divinity assigned to us that shows us what that function is. The whites and their offspring, Asians, Europeans, any non-Black individuals, they don't have a divinity assigned to their head spiritually. So they don't have a function in the world. So when they talk about karma and reincarnation and karmic debt and what you're supposed to do and so forth, since they have no grounding in creation because they don't have a function, then their pseudo philosophy about why you're in the world and what's the nature of reality and so forth is always going to be corrupt. Healthy cells have a function in the body. If one of them goes haywire and becomes cancerous and disfigured and then seeks to consume and destroy every other cell in the body, they lost the original function. Now they're just cancerous. So they have no function. So the immune system isolates them, kills them, and expels them from the body. The whites and their offspring are the cancerous cells in the body of Black humanity. So they don't have a divine function. There's no purpose for them existing. Some of them degenerated into what they are, and they're moving through the body like cancer, proliferating and trying to consume everything in the body. So the response is to eradicate, but they don't have a function, so that bleeds into their pseudo-philosophical ideals, but we do. So this is why when in the West, they say they're trying to go to heaven. Christianity, Islam, Judaism, some aspect of the whole purpose of life is trying to escape this world and go live in heaven for eternity. The world is evil or sinful. The flesh is weak and all this other stupidity. That's their escape. Their flesh is weak. The world is, a prison for them. They came out of the ice and everything else. They're the ones who attack the world and pollute the system, pollute the water, pollute the land, pollute the air, and so forth. They have no attachment to the fertile earth mother and so forth, or the different divinities that operate within the atmosphere. That they're not connected like that. So to them, they're trying to escape the world, trying to escape their bodies. That's part of their pathology. In the East, the same thing. They're still Eurasians. They say it a little bit differently. Escape the cycle of reincarnation. They're trying not to reincarnate. They put forth this idiotic notion that once you do what you're supposed to do or learn what you're supposed to learn, then you can advance and you don't have to reincarnate on Earth anymore. You can go into nirvana or go to a higher state. That's them trying to escape the physical body because their bodies are corrupt and the Earth is not a sacred place for them because they're cancerous cells. So they're trying to escape. It's pure stupidity, but this is part of their philosophy. And then they try to force us to embrace that, and some of our people embrace it. We're talking about, well, in African tradition, if you live according to divine wisdom, you don't have to reincarnate anymore. You just become an ancestor. Pure foolishness, totally false. Our physical bodies are sacred shrines of divine order for the divinities to operate through. The earth itself, the earth mother, fertile Asase Afua, the barren earth mother Asase Ya, these twin earth mother divinities, these are goddesses, divinities, expressions of divine order. The earth is sacred and divine for us. When we're sent into the world, it's a privilege to be in the world because it's sacred and divine. We're not trying to escape because we actually have a purpose in the world. Cancer cells do not. So we can't listen to their philosophy. Now, so when it comes to how we function in the world, People talk about mental health. Priests and priestesses of our traditions are the original quote unquote therapists. We did a whole broadcast on that. How do we function in the world? How do we overcome any perceived obstacle through religious ritual practice and soulosophy? This is what we're talking about. We say when we become disaligned from our okra through misguided thoughts, intentions, and actions, we place ourselves in disorder and will naturally experience the effects of disorder. So, as we say, if one touches a flame, you'll get burned. If you ingest poison, you'll become ill. If one projects perverse thoughts, intentions, and engages in perverse behaviors, those disordered vibrations are received by others, living people as well as discarnate, deceased people. Those individuals living and discarnate who are on the same frequency will be attracted to such perverse thoughts or misguided thoughts, intentions, and actions. And the person who projects them, you then draw disordered individuals to you. Those who are on the same frequency as you, then you draw them to you. Your conscious and unconscious interaction with them engenders more disordered energy or magnetism, more disordered effects, etc. We experience this as amanihunu suffering. Now, how do you repel negative, discordant thoughts, intentions, and ultimately actions, and that coming from other individuals? You realign with the the soul, the divine consciousness, through the ritual process. Ritual song, ritual dance, ritual chant, ritual prayer, ritual SUSUW meditation, and so forth. You can affect that through oshwe libation, ritual offering, a number of different things. Now, so you can repel those negative thoughts, intentions, and ultimately actions, as well as disordered individuals and entities. Just like someone who's strong and vibrant, a weaker person, they can feel the strength of your aura, your kahibit, and they kind of are repelled from that when you have a strong, vibrant aura. And the people who are operating on the same frequency, they're drawn to you, and the people who are operating on a lower frequency, they're repelled by it. Just like two magnets repelling on the table and so forth. When you strengthen your kahibit, or your so-called aura, you can repel most of these negative individuals, living and discarnate. But if you engage in some disordered behavior and you create disorder within yourself and the world and so forth, certain other things are set in motion. So we say all of the damage is not immediately repaired when you first begin to realign yourself. So we give the example of if one gets shot, the bullet being lodged in the tissue is a disordered situation. When the bullet is surgically removed, the person is sewed up. The immediate disorder has been addressed. However, the wound is not fully healed. Further infection could occur if one is not focused. Even if further infection does not occur, because the wound is kept clean, the wound is not totally healed. Even when stitches are removed, the body operates according to physiological cycles. And there's going to be a time period and some pain and suffering until the body can fully heal the wound. So you can get shot, you can get, surgery and so forth, but it's still going to take some months before it fully heals. So you're going to experience some suffering even after you've stopped, the immediate danger. When we engage in disorder and open a wound in our kahibit, the ancient Kemetic term for aura, just like you can cut your arm and open up a wound and now bacteria can infest unless you keep it covered and so forth. But when you engage in disorder and it's consistent, you create a wound or an opening in your kahibit, your aura. And once you create that opening, then bacterial entities or individuals, disordered living people, disordered deceased, they're like bacteria that are drawn to that. Now, and it can set in, these infections can set in. We can then suffer from various manifestations of such an infection. If we do not realign with our okra, the disorder will continue. So you can suffer from people, you're drawing people physically to you and you engage in behaviors that create disorder in your life, or you draw people in spiritually. But sometimes that can affect people mentally. They're hearing and experiencing negative, discarnate, deceased individuals. They can't handle these communications. They can even fall into psychosis and other forms of mental illness. So, or if it's not that extreme, they can fall into things like depression major depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, and so forth. So that's akin to not addressing a pain and allowing the pain or the tumor to grow until there's a crisis situation. So you allow that to happen because you're engaged in some disorder. You disalign from the divinity that governs the head, and now you opened up a wound and you drew this bacteria to you, negative individuals to you, physical and non-physical, and their projections that influences your thoughts, your energy, even the stress on your body and so forth. All these things are happening. Now, just like you can die without addressing a tumor, and you can find yourself in the spirit realm, you can transition, die, and you still never realigned yourself spiritually and became spiritually mature. So you transitioned as a spiritually immature, afflicted individual. Now, we're going to talk about how we need structures in place to deal with that. But people transition when they reincarnate through their descendants a couple of hundred years later, and they come back into the world. They're the same afflicted spirit. If they didn't do any spiritual realignment in the ancestral realm, they're the same afflicted individual who reincarnates through their family. So you have a person with an open spiritual wound being born into the world. Sometimes they're drawn into a branch of the family that's weaker, that's also on a lower frequency, a disordered frequency and so forth, and they're drawn into a womb like that for that branch of the family. And they grew up in a situation where there's negativity and so forth. And there are a number of individuals with spiritual wounds and so forth, and they find themselves in a negative situation. Now, if we had culture in place, we could have ameliorated that because we had structures from birth that recognize when a spirit comes back into the world, it's an ancient ancestral spirit coming back. If they're afflicted, we need to deal with that immediately. When they what their function in the world is, we give them a name that carries that energy. So every time they hear the name or speak it, those vibrations help to realign the person. They have a naming ceremony. They have head cleansings on a weekly basis, a ritual, every 6 weeks or every 3 weeks and so forth. They're constantly engaged in ritual practices throughout the course of their lives to begin to realign them so they don't create a great deal of disorder and bring that infection into the community. So, and that also has implications for when you see individuals who are suffering. Every time you see suffering, that doesn't automatically mean be suffering. Some should not be, so to speak. Maybe there's oppression that happened. But some people, if they were people, rapists, child molester, and so forth, and now they're suffering, it's not your role to step in the midst of that retribution and try to assist them. No, we go around that, let them suffer. But then you see other individuals who are individuals, you attune to your own cross. Should you assist, or intuitively do you find and recognize that this person is suffering from the effects of their criminal behavior? We don't need to step in between that. We need to let them suffer because they deserve that. So now, so this is the key right here. We say there are some who suffer as children and adults because of a previous lifetime where an infection of the spirit was opened as a result of ignorance, immaturity, not criminality, but we grew up in places where we're ignorant, immature, we're brainwashed and so forth. We engage in self-destructive behaviors because that's how we were raised. And we say that in our community. We have a personal responsibility to align with there's a collective responsibility as an Omai, as a community, to have structures in place, culture that will protect people, as we said, and place people on the path to alignment and realignment. That's part of our ancestral religion. We know that people are going to come into the world that are, disordered in some way, or even the ones who are not, but they just need to be raised up properly so they don't create disorder in the community. Some people are going to reincarnate and they were suffering in a previous lifetime and they can bring that into the community. So we start the purification process immediately and consistently. That is the function of culture, to culture and order. Now, so when people return through Bebra, the Akan term for reincarnation, as soon as the baby is, conceived, divination is done, IDBC is done to see what kind of spirit has come, what side of the family did that spirit incarnate from, eventually what the name is going to be, all these different things, what kind of challenges they're going to have based on their spiritual anatomy. All those things are worked out early on. Now, we give an example. If a 2-year-old walks out into the street and gets hit by a car, the community doesn't blame the 2-year-old. It's the parent for not having a structure in place whereby the 2-year-old will never ever be hit by a car. That should never happen. If that ever happens, it's an indictment on the community. The 2-year-old is a returning ancestor or ancestress and may have placed themselves in a negative situation through Bebra reincarnation out of ignorance or immaturity. So they were drawn through the womb of a descendant into a region where these people are not responsible and so that's part of their personal responsibility, but we also have a communal responsibility to know that that is a possibility and to account for that. Adult, a very ignorant, immature, self-destructive individual lives a life of disalignment from the Akra and dies that way. They become a discarnate anxiety. At some point, they reincarnate through one of their descendants. They are drawn into a womb of a descendant who in some ways is on the vibration, frequency, and so forth. They have not been healed of their infection from one incarnation to the next. You don't get a clean slate every time you reincarnate. That's not true. They therefore are still a magnet for parasites like any open wound, specifically if the community, family they are born into are controlled by white cultural, spiritual infection, disalignment, and so forth, and they don't have any structure in place to mitigate that. So this child, quote unquote, is the same ancestor or ancestress who previously lived a life of disorder and is now operating through a new body, because spirit in a new body is still a magnet for parasites, parasitical individuals, and or attach themselves or are drawn to the individual. This quote unquote child, this returning ancestor or ancestress, then suffers injuries, molestation, abuse, a number of different things. So we say, where did the suffering come from? Where did the Amani Hunu come from? Is this, God is punishing you, and that's why you were attacked or tortured and so forth? Be molested so he can use you to show you, pure stupidity. None of that is accurate. The quote unquote child in a previous lifetime may have, as an adult, an infection within his or her spirit through disorder, disalignment from the Akra. There were 2 opportunities for the community to have avoided the negative incarnation. So how could we have avoided that? And this is from a holistic perspective, and this is why it's like with a 2-year-old, we can predetermine before the baby comes out of the womb. We set things up so certain things will never happen to the child ever. They don't have a 2-year-old walking out in the traffic. Most millions of Black families, that does not happen because they have structures in place, at least for that. If we practice our culture, we have cultural structures in place for the majority of everything that we go through negative, that's insanely negative and everything else. We have cultural structures in place so that those things will not happen. But when we're born into a false pseudo-religious, pseudo-spiritual, cultural environment, and we don't have those guardrails in place, then there are all kinds of negative things that can happen: suffering, torture, abuse, molestation, all kinds, drug addiction, all kinds of things, because we're embracing their culture and not ours. So there were 2 opportunities to deal with this individual. One, when the individual died, in the previous sound funerary practices could have assisted the discarnate individual with making transition to Asamindo, the ancestral realm, so they could work on their own spiritual development. One of the reasons we have spiritual funeral practices, IEA, is to deal directly with this, to assist the person at the present moment so they can engage in their spiritual cultivation when they transition to the ancestral realm. So we know they're going to reincarnate, so why not assist them in the ritual at the funeral, as well as periodically ancestral ritual, ancestral communication, to strengthen those kinds of individuals? Because you also have spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. They don't need assistance. They're the ones assisting us. But you have a small percentage who are not cultivated. So we can do things periodically to help strengthen them, motivate, ritual, pouring libation, different things like that. So when they come back into the world, they're more purified and focused, so they're not bringing a great deal of disorder into the world. And they're also not, excuse me, attracting parasitic entities either. So that was one thing we could have done. Two, when the returning spirit incarnated, the community, as we said before, could have had ritual structures in place to assess the spiritual condition, divination of the child, and once assessed, establish the child in repelling disordered entities, as well as living individuals who are parasitical. While the child encountered challenges in life, the nature of the challenges would be much less severe. Like the difference between falling off a bike and scratching, opposed to being hit by a car with very severe injuries. So you're going to have challenges, but they can be much less severe when you have culture in place that allows you to look around the corner and make a better decision before things happen. So there's a balance between individual responsibility, transcarnation incarnations, and communal responsibility. So in order to limit suffering of Manihunu going forward, we must constantly seek to remain in alignment with our okra ritually, so that we can make decisions that are harmonious. We can also establish, must also, to perpetuate this practice, thereby affecting a larger Afuraitkaitnit community, consciously and unconsciously. We have the capacity to stop the cycle of transcarnational Amanihunu or suffering. It is rooted in our culture, our Amandre. Now, let me show you a couple of things and where you can go to get that information. Okay, so in our book, the Anthology, one of the 12 books within this anthology is the Okra Complex, the Soul of Akan Fo. So all the information about the nature of the soul, the divine consciousness, your divine function in the world, everything we've been is in this book. And this, of course, is part of this is one of the books within that. So when you go through this one, you will see, we just talked about the Ka, Okra. Hold on a second. Okay. Here we talk about race and the Okra. We talk about the difference between, the races spiritually. This idea that race is a social construct is pure stupidity. Even the word race was created by our people thousands of years ago. We did a 6-week course on res, the origin of the term race, and its biological connotations. We talk about the cosmological foundation of creation. Amen and Amenet, the great mother, great father, supreme being, and the primordial divinities that bring creation into the world, and then how our Okra soul, divine consciousness, is taken from the great soul or divine consciousness of Amen and Amenet and so forth. We get into that. entire notion of your krabia, your divine function, your kat, toil you're supposed to do, function in the world, and so forth. So that's the Nkra and Krabia. And we show the connection between ancient Kanit and Kemet, as well as the Akan image of the Ka, the soul, the divine consciousness, head region of the person, and so forth. Just showing you where it's located. There's also the nature of the She and Shebia, which are the spiritual potencies that you have received to execute your divine function in the world. So we show this is important. So if you look at the right and left hemispheres of the cerebral, we show the Krad and Krabia, the left and right hemisphere on the top. And then you see the cerebellum in its two hemispheres. We show the She and Shebia. The cerebrum or the cerebral cortex deals with, conscious cognition and things like that. So you have the masculine and feminine aspects of the cerebrum, and then the cerebellum deals with motor movement and force and power and coordination and energy and so forth. And so when you look at it, Nkran and Krabia, the masculine and feminine aspects of your divine function, who are you? What kind of cell within the great divine body are you? Why did you come into the world? How are you to serve? Are you going to be a healer? You're going to deal with agriculture. You're going to deal with engineering. You deal with defense in the world. What kind of cell are you? That's defined by the Nkran and Krabia. And the She and Shebia in the Akan language, as well as the language of ancient Kemet, we're talking about what kind of force or energy are you given to execute your function. If you're a child of a fiery divinity and you have that force in creation, then you're given a set of fiery energy that you learn how to expand. When you look at this structure, spiritually, your spiritual head reflects the physical. It's divided into a fourfold structure and so forth. The consciousness and the power. The knowledge of what your function in the world is and how to execute that function. The knowledge of the power that you've been given and how to wield that power to execute your function in the world. So that's what we deal with in that we go into detail about. And of course, we show in both languages, Ka and Kayat, She and Shayat, and so forth, and Kra and Krabia, She and Shebiat, and Akan, showing us the same structure of your spiritual head, physical brain. And we have there are a number of different things that we go into in that particular text, but when you download that book or you can the book, purchase the book, that's one of the 12 books where we talk about, we're talking about philosophy, we're talking about culture, we're talking about soulosophy. This is part of the hoodoo tradition because it is the Akan ancestral religion in North America. When you get up every moment of every day, we have a function to execute. We have a specific, unique means by which we execute our functioning. Sometimes we get disaligned from that processes to get back in alignment with that function. So just like you have your physical health, and as long as you have a proper diet and exercise routine and regimen and you get enough sleep and you operate in a normal way, you'll be healthy. If you fall off track, then you have methods through holistic health to get yourself back on track with herbs and other forms of medicine and so forth. Spiritually, when you operate harmoniously and naturally in the world and so forth, and you execute your function, then everything is going fine. Things cause you to become disaligned from that function. Then how do you get back on track? Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, ritual process, ritual song, dance, ritual prayer, ritual chant, ritual movement, these different things, ritual processes like or Fariba, giving offerings, or various forms of ritual practice and so forth. Realign ourselves with divine order to get that depression, anxiety, lack of knowledge, whatever it is, move that out the way, track. When we talk about hoodoo, we're talking about first and foremost soulosophy of our cosmos and how we realign ourselves with divine order when we make legitimate mistakes. Root work, as we said, is only 1/8 of the tradition. But what are you doing if you're not engaged in root work? People are not engaged in root work every day. People say, I practice hoodoo, and they start talking about root work and recipes. What are you doing 99.9% of the rest of the time? Because most people are making medicine every day. You're living in the world. So how do you interact in the world? What are the principles? What is the philosophy? What are the guiding points of the cosmology that govern yourself every moment of every day for every situation imaginable, as well as your children and the community and so forth? And how do we build as a Oman, a Black nation and so forth? That's all part of our soulosophy. So that's what we wanted to convey. Okay, so like we said, when you look at this, look at the film, you will see that we reference one of our books, the Kuku Tuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction, and for example, showing that Cain, Su, and Merit, misnomer Jesus and Mary, or Jesus and Mary, and so forth, is corrupted from Cain, Su, and Merit. You go a little bit further, you'll see that the river divinity Muhammad is corrupted into Muhammad. You see that the earth divinity Ptah was corrupted into Buddha. You'll see the moon divinity Yao or Yahweh to Yahweh and so forth. So we start off with that. So religions being the real thing, which they never were. We show how they were manufactured in our book, Kuku Tuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction. And we touch on it in the film, but we go into detail about it. And the Kuku Tuntun is the second book in the 600-page document. And you'll see that here. So, but in the hoodoo film, first we go into ancient Khanid and Kemet, Nubian Egypt. We also travel to Ghana and so forth. We show these ritual practices, and then we come to North America, and we show the ritual processes that we engage in North America. So let me give you an example of that. So this is when we were in Ghana. Engaging in ritual at the region where my matri clan is from, that we found out my matri clan is from and so forth, and doing ritual okra water or soul washing in that particular of the Afram River and so forth. But that's in that region, invoking the divinity. Spirit takes up residence in the body of water wherever you are. That charged up water is used to cleanse the spiritual head, to pull that negative debris and negative projections and so forth, to purify the spirit. That's what we're engaged in. Hold on one second. Negative projections. Hold on 1 second. And then back a bit. When we go to Edisto Island area, which is one of the Gullah Islands on the Gullah Geechee corridor, South Carolina, engage in ancestral ritual at Nana Epo Abena, divinity of the ocean. And then you have Nana Bosom Po as the male divinity of the ocean. We give an ancestral offering at that, sacred space. The bodies of our ancestresses and ancestors, their bones are lining the ocean, coming from the eastern coast of the United States to the west, Afuraitkaitnit, West Africa, and so forth. But we go every year to engage that ritual process and to have, it's an annual Hapi Meri retreat forth. But so whether we're in ancient Kanini Kemet, Ghana, or North America and so forth, we were showing culture from ancient East Afuraitkaitnit to West Afuraitkaitnit, all the way to North America unbroken. We also show here, 1 second. This is the Nyama divinity, also called Nyama or Njama, Jama in North America. Kakaru came to be pronounced Johnny Kakaru by the whites and their offspring. But this is the divinity shrine from whom our ancient Akwamu ancestor, Nyama or Jama, was named after. And he had the root, the Kakaru. So Jama's Kakaru or Jama Kakaru came to be pronounced Johnny Kakaru, the Hayan, the conqueror, and so forth. But this goes all the way back to the Nyama or Jama shrine in the region of Ghana, in Kwabre, and so forth. So we show of how we brought this culture to people and so forth. Now, so as we said, we are raising funds to complete the part 2 of this Hoodoo film trilogy. We're doing that right now. We're halfway done. We're trying to complete it by October 18th for the Hoodoo Mind Festival. And then you can attend the pre-screening either in person here in Washington, D.C. As we mentioned before, we'll just show you that flyer once again. Or you can view the screening of the film online, and we have the private online link for the screening. But October 18th is our 11th annual Hoodoo Mind, Hoodoo Nation Festival. And that's where we want to screen the film. So if you can assist us now with the contributing to our effort, and we want to say, we thank everybody who's contributed so far. That's helping us to complete the filming process and post-production and all of that. So if you can contribute to our effort, it's on the screen now. We appreciate that, and your contribution gives you a ticket to the screening, whether it's in person or online. And we just want to show you what we have coming up on the 23rd. So you can register for this 4-week course. And that is the SUSUW course, Meditation Instructor Certification course. And when you become certified in this 4-week course, then you have the credential that you can use, and it's designed for you to utilize that to conduct meditation sessions at places of employment, schools, after-school programs, human services organizations, cultural organizations, a number of different places where people typically pay between $100, $200 for you to come out and conduct a meditation session. even if you're at a human services organization at a women's shelter, or someone who's dealing with, mental health and so forth, or addictions, and they have group therapy sessions on a regular basis. And then one of the therapists will say, hey, we're going to bring someone out on Friday who's going to conduct like a 10 or 15-minute SUSUW or meditation session, which will assist you with your anxiety, your lack of motivation, and depression and things like that. They'll pay you $100, $200 just to come out and do that. And if you have a couple of organizations in place, like one women's shelter, one school, one place of employment, one cultural organization, you can make $600, $700 a week just by conducting introductory meditation sessions, conducting them with whether it's youth or adults, employees or people, students, and so forth. And it's a way to impact our community in a positive capacity, but also to generate income for yourself as an entrepreneur. So that begins on the 23rd. We have about 10 spaces left. There are payment plan options. You can go on the site, and let me put that link in the chat room right now for you. We've already certified about 44 people so far, and they're utilizing their certification to, within that 4 weeks, to begin to generate income for themselves, but empower our community. So the SUSUW Meditation Instructor Certification course, the next one, begins September 23rd. We have about 10 spots left open, so you can check that out now. Okay, so Yerase, we thank you all for joining in with us, and Yebesha Bio, we will meet again. Until.
SUSUW Meditation Instructor Certification. SUSUW is the ancient Akan term for meditation. SUSUW originated in our ancestral culture of Afuraitkaitnit, Africa, tens of thousands of years ago. This ancient practice has been utilized to regulate physical, emotional, and mental balance for millennia in varied expressions wherever our people have migrated in the world. The scientific benefits of meditation for youth and adults have been well documented, enhancing learning outcomes, regulating behavior, overcoming anxiety and depression, rebalancing hormones, lowering blood pressure, reducing stress, regulating weight loss, overcoming addictions, developing discipline, maintaining focus to overcome obstacles to short and long-term goals. Our meditation instructor certification is for individuals, independent contractors, educators, homeschoolers, human services professionals, behavioral health professionals, and others. As a certified instructor, you are qualified to contract with independent schools, charter schools, cultural organizations, corporate entities, women's and family shelters, community centers, colleges, and more to conduct meditation sessions on a daily, weekly, or periodic basis. Our instruction is rooted in our Nkwamwa whole life wellness model.
That means greetings. I just wanted to give a quick update. You'll get the details in the clip that follows. I just wanted to show everyone. So my soft cover book, ODWIRASEM Trustorical Anthology, is now available. It's live on Amazon, but we also have a 30% discount when you order directly through our website. As we said before, in some of the postings and information we sent out, Amazon takes 60% off the top for booksellers on their distribution site and so forth. So we can offer it at a 30% discount, on our website. So you'll get the information in the clip that follows, but 8.5 by 11 size, 600 pages, full color. And we go into detail about various aspects of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion, culture, nation building, true historical information, spirituality, cosmology, and every facet of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black identity, and so forth. So check out the clip that follows. We look forward to connecting with you. And Yerase, we thank you for your support. ODWIRASEM, Trustorical Anthology. This is a collection of 12 books in one volume written by Odwirafo, Kwesi, Radnehmpata, Akan. This 600-page anthology is comprised of 12 books within the 31-book corpus published by Odwirafo, which focus on trustery, cosmology, ritual, identity, and nation-building restoration for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, African Black people, wherever we exist in the world. Included within this anthology is the origin of the fictional characters Jesus, Allah, Yahweh, Buddha, and more. The etymology of the term God in the language of ancient Kemet, quote-unquote, Egypt. Origin of the term Afuraka, Afuraitkaitnit, Africa in Kemet. Etymology and cosmology of religion and spirit in Kemet. Ankh and Kara, the origin of the terms yoga and chakra in Kemet. Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black origin of civilization. Divine order in Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African cosmology. Ritual in Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African ancestral religion. Nature of the soul as divine consciousness in Akan cosmology. More means dead. Male-female complementary balance in ancestral religion. Ancestresses, ancestors, goddesses, gods, biology, geology. Racial exclusivity in ancestral religion. Spirigenetic inheritance. Divine prohibition against dissexuality, homosexuality in Kemet. Black nation building, restoration, rooted in ancestral religion, and more. This anthology was curated to function as a volume that will positively transform the mind of any Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black individual, youth, or adult who receives it. We examine every facet of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African identity, empowering readers to transform their minds and thus transform their condition wherever they exist in the world. Special 30% discount for our subscribers and followers. See our website to order now. Yerase.